This isn't just about spending more, it's about giving the algorithm room to work. We never want to hit that ceiling. And when a campaign is performing well, the last thing we want to do is limit its potential. That's the beauty of cost controls. That's what we're tapping into. Hey everyone, Cody Wittick here. Obviously today I'm going to be breaking down something that can completely transform your Facebook ad performance. How to manage cost controls on a day-to-day basis. So if you're struggling with Facebook ads or just looking to get more efficient with your spend, this is going to be for you. If you haven't heard of cost controls already on this channel, or you're just stumbling upon this video, this is Meta's bidding strategy that lets you set a maximum cost per acquisition target rather than just burning through your daily budget. So whether you're just starting with cost controls or you've been using them or aren't sure if you're doing it right, today I'm going to be sharing the exact playbook. This isn't theory. This is the exact system that we use across all of our clients at Kynship, at my agency. That's also helped brands scale from 5, 6, 7 figures into the 8-figure range, 9 figures of monthly spend, while maintaining profitability. So I'm going to walk you through setting them up correctly, how often to adjust them. Hint, it's going to be way less than you think, and show you the decision tree we've developed after managing millions in ad spend. So without further ado, if you want to stop wasting money on ads that don't convert or start scaling efficiently, even better, this video is going to be your blueprint. Let's dive in. All right, so what are you looking at? Let's start with the foundation. Here's the formula for setting initial budgets. Your target CPA times 50 equals your daily budget. So if your target CPA is $50, your initial daily budget would be $2,500. And I know what you're thinking. That seems aggressive, right? Like, here's what most people miss though. This is a guardrail, not what we expect to spend. So we're actually aiming to spend less than 50% of this amount. The goal is to exit the learning phase quickly, ideally within the first day. So the budget isn't meant to be a target. It's meant to be basically give the algorithm room to work. So we definitely don't want the budget to be the thing that hinders spend, especially if we find conversions at our target CPA. So for setting your initial cost control, you need 2 data points. One is your current CPA in the ad account. Ideally using 7-day click attribution. You don't want to include view through attribution in this. We just want clickers and purchasers. And then ultimately your AMER target from your forecasting. So where do we set the initial cost control? Somewhere between those 2 values. So if we started at $75, this gives us room to adjust while balancing historical performance with the business goals. So there's a whole other host of videos around how we forecast our business, how we would forecast your business, but AMER, new customer return on ad spend, this is the target that ultimately we want to translate that into an in-ad account CPA and make sure that levels up to our AMER target. So again, the key insight that you definitely don't want to miss here is that your cost control should directly tie to your AMER target. So we don't want to pick arbitrary numbers, or if you're currently trying to switch to cost controls, oh, great, it controls cost. Well, this is the CPA that I'm aiming to hit, even though historically in your ad account, you've never hit this CPA in your life. That would not be the place that you want to set the initial CPA. So that's how we actually set our initial target, right? This is how we set our initial CPA. So step 2, this is where we observe. So once your campaigns are live, we enter what I would call the observation phase. This is obviously crucial. What I would say, the rule of thumb is we need a minimum of 7 days. The more data, the better. So ideally, actually 7 days of data because we're running on 7-day click campaigns. We're monitoring spend rate. We're monitoring CPA performance. We're monitoring how that's translating to AMER. Patience is your superpower here. I've seen so many brands panic on day 2 and then start making adjustments, completely derailing their campaign learning. So what we want to do is let us be patient. Why? Because Meta's algorithm needs consistent signals to optimize effectively. Every time you make an adjustment, you're essentially resetting parts of those learnings. So when it comes to making adjustments, we need to understand, okay, how is AMER performing? Are we lower, equal, or above target? Ideally, review performance would be after 30 days. That's ideal. That doesn't mean that we don't make an adjustment within those 30 days. That just means we want the totality of the first month. We're going to understand how is our CPA translating to our AMER. Again, NC ROAS here. How is that translating to our overall AMER that is tied to our profitability and top line goals that we have in our framework. So what you see on the left, if AMER is below target, we're going to reduce that cost control by $5 increments, or £5 if you're watching this. If AMER, so we're going to reduce cost controls if we're below target. If AMER is on target, we're going to maintain current cost control, obviously pretty straightforward. If we are above target, we're going to increase cost controls by $5. So now an important caveat here, if you're way off your AMER target or NC ROAS target, you might need to make a bigger adjustment. The goal is to identify the cost control that levels up to that as quickly as possible. So don't be afraid to make a more significant change if the data is clearly showing that you are far off. Small methodical adjustments typically beat radical changes, but there are exceptions when you need to course correct quickly. So how is budget spending on the next engine? Is like, or we need to adjust budgets down below based on meta spending. So if we're spending less than 50% of the daily budget, no budget change needed. If spending 50 to 99% of the daily budget, we need to increase that by at least 15%. And if we're spending 100% of the daily budget, increase budget by at least 25%. This isn't just about spending more. It's about giving the algorithm room to work. We never want to hit that ceiling. And when a campaign is performing well, the last thing we want to do is limit its potential. That's the beauty of cost controls. That's what we're tapping into. We don't want the budget to be the governor of their spend. We want the bid to be. So again, there's a ton of nuance here. There's obviously campaigns and ad accounts that have a ton of data behind them. So we don't have to wait as long to see if our CPA, and we might launch campaigns when we switch to cost controls. We might immediately launch with inflated budgets. Like from an 80-20 rule, this is how we would recommend monitoring, either switching to cost controls or launching your ad account in cost controls from a day-to-day basis. So once we have campaigns running and we've found a cost control that levels up to our AMER target on a per SKU basis, because we set campaigns on a per SKU basis, the management approach shifts slightly. So for like established campaigns, we're going to maintain that cost control that are hitting our AMER targets, of course. When we get new content in, like we're going to introduce it on an inflated cost control that's different, slightly above what we have our current established campaigns at. How much we inflate depends entirely on the brand's priorities, but for example, some brands prioritize performance above all else. So in these cases, we barely inflate the cost control for new content, maybe 5 to 10% max. On other brands, we emphasize getting spend on new content, even if it impacts performance a bit. So for them, we might inflate cost controls by as much as 30% on new content. But here's what's interesting. If your creative is truly new, distinct, diverse enough to acquire customers effectively, it will still get spent at the same cost controls. So the inflation is just there to give new content a fair shot. Prior content has the social proof, the data behind it. So we want to offset that favoritism slightly for just up to a week's time. So with updates to like ASC, with new ASC campaigns, we're moving toward more of a consolidated approach. And I would recommend this, that you don't add new campaigns nearly as often as maybe in the times past where I would recommend that. So the idea that you need to constantly add new campaigns is somewhat outdated. And instead, you need to focus on, number one, maintaining stable cost controls in established campaigns. Number two, adding new creative to existing campaigns. And then three, testing new offers within the current structure. So this consolidated approach improves learning, reduces the management overhead that constantly comes with launching new campaigns. One of the things I really want to be leery of, going back to this decision tree, right, is one of the things that I want to be leery of is making these adjustments too much. What I mean by that. So again, like I mentioned this pretty quickly, is like we tend to chase performance. That's a big mistake. I really want to over-index this, is people chase immediate results, which leads to constantly adjusting cost controls. You're going to miss efficiency for a period, so you lower the bid. Then you miss volume, so you raise it again. It becomes back and forth cycle that actually hurts your performance. So the rule here is never assume that past performance guarantees future outcomes. You need to assess larger samples, at least a month of data, and think of your cost control as a model bet that will get right over time. The only real reason to significantly change your cost controls if you're wrong, like really wrong on AOV, not because you're missing the target CPA you've set as your cost control. So again, for ongoing management, there are guardrails, maximum 3 adjustments in a 7-day period. Ideally even less, maybe just 1. Wait at least 3 days between adjustments, and then base decisions on AMER alignment, again, NC ROAS, new customer return on ad spend, not daily CPA fluctuations. This is where people get into trouble. That's a big problem. Media buyers can't keep their hands off campaigns. They're constantly chasing performance, expecting past performance dictates future outcomes. And sometimes doing nothing is the smartest move. Now, let's talk some advanced applications where the system really shines. First, seasonality management. With cost controls and inflated budgets, the beauty of this is Meta automatically updates and allocates spend during high performance days and then withholds on lower spending days or lower performance. Second, sales events like Black Friday, Cyber Monday. Many of you have probably been in this situation where you're constantly hitting up your agency on a Black Friday, hey, spend more. Cyber Monday or some sort of in-between period, pull back. They're not responding quick enough. So on the playbook, like on BFCM, you'd want to set your daily budget 5 to 10x higher than normal with the same cost control and then watch it scale automatically. Third, new offer testing. Cost controls let you test anything, new offers, landing pages, products, without risking your entire budget. So if they work, great. If not, you've spent minimally on the test. So those three would be significant things that are more advanced. Now, again, core philosophy here. Cost controls management isn't about constant tweaking. It's about setting up guardrails and letting Meta do its thing, which is protecting your profitability. And the daily management is more about strategic patience than tactical engineering. And this is exactly why we run 100% of our client accounts on cost controls at Kynship. So if you're getting started with cost controls, start with the decision tree, like what you see on screen, and then follow the observation phase religiously, make methodical adjustments, and trust the process. Lean into Meta, not lean out, and the results will speak for themselves. And that's what I want to finish on. So that's what I'm going to finish and wrap up this episode. There's going to be probably a part 2 to this, and I will see you next time.